Good morning, this is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Tom McKenzie in London. These are the stories that set your agenda. Easing concerns. Asian stocks rise, the yen slumps after dovish comments from the Bank of Japan. In the US, Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon says he's not expecting an emergency cut from the Fed. Campaign kickoff. Kamala Harris takes aim at key battleground states after picking Governor Tim Walz as running mate for the Democratic ticket. And earnings dispatched from shipping giant Maersk and Europe's most valuable company, Novo Nordisk. We bring you our exclusive interview with the Siemens Energy CEO in just a few moments. So the Bank of Japan Deputy Governor riding to the rescue, coming out very clearly saying there will be no further hikes in a time of market volatility. Giving relief then to these markets, the yen is weaker and Japanese equities are rallying in the session. The read across then to Europe as futures point higher by 1.4% after some very modest gains across the European session yesterday. European stock 600 ending up just 0.3%. It was a stronger session over on Wall Street, and you're looking to build on that today with the S&P E-minis pointing higher by 0.9%. Nasdaq futures also higher by 213 points. FTSE 100 futures here in the UK looking to add 1.3%, 105 points. Let's flip the board and look cross-asset. You have now had 2 days of selling across US Treasuries, and we check in on the two-year yield, now back above 4% with a yield move of 4 basis points. The Japanese yen then, the focus of the day when it comes to the currency space, with the softness coming through, down 2.2% at 147. Brent, $76 a barrel, gaining 0.4%, and gold at 2,393. It is a big day then for earnings. We bring you the lines crossing from Commerzbank, and net interest income comes in slightly above the estimates, but the top line is that net income for the second quarter for Commerzbank, the key German lender, missing estimates. Higher loan loss provisions of just shy of 200 million euros in the second quarter versus the estimates of 170 million. So it's a pretty sizable tick up in terms of loan loss provisions. Net interest income for the second quarter was slightly, marginally above the estimates. And here's the red head for Commerzbank. They are planning a buyback of 600 million euros. The bank has confirmed its targets for 2024. Bloomberg Intelligence saying that Commerzbank is one of the biggest beneficiaries of interest rate hikes, but may also be among the most vulnerable as rates fall. We're going to be speaking with the Commerzbank CFO, Bettina Orlop, at 7 a.m. London time. So do tune in for that interview, breaking down those earnings. Talking of earnings, we have more lines crossing, this time from the Dutch lender ABN AMRO. In terms of the second quarter, operating income beating estimates. This is a stock, by the way, up 12% year to date. There was an expectation that net interest income would soften for this lender. Second quarter operating income coming in above the estimates at 2.17 billion euros. Just slightly above the estimates. And in terms of profit in the second quarter, that was a decent beat for ABN AMRO. 642 million euros. The estimates had been for 581 million euros. Let's check in on the Asian markets, bringing Avril Hong standing by in Singapore. And once again, Avril, a reminder of the centrality that Japan is playing across these global markets.
Absolutely, and how the BOJ's words are rippling through what we're seeing in the Asia Pacific. For the second session, we're seeing Japanese equities, the ones that are leading the Asia Pacific rebound. Infotech has now flipped to becoming the outperforming sector once again, and this is all against the backdrop of what we heard from the Deputy Governor Uchida. He says they're not going to hike rates with the market still unstable. And of course, the concern about future rate hikes is what rattled markets after Uchida refused to commit to the terminal rate. So this is what we're seeing in Japanese equities. They flipped from losses to gains after Uchida spoke. But important to note here, despite these gains, they're still far from their July peaks, and they haven't erased the worst 3-day rout on record that we saw not so long ago. The yen continues losing ground, but flip the board. I'll talk you through what is underpinning the gains in these Japanese benchmarks is the financial stocks. They were already green before Uchida spoke, and this is because there is an appearance that yields have bottomed. That's easing some of the concerns about pressure on their loan margins. And then the extended gains comments following the words of the Deputy Governor, double-digit climbs. Flip the board again. Let's take a closer look at what we're seeing on dollar-yen. It was a very pronounced reaction to Uchida's comments there, you see there. And now we're hearing from the likes of Citi Quants. They say that for now, the yen carry trade is out of the danger zone. They say look to the yuan carry trade. That's where more cracks could emerge. We're also seeing our MLife strategists talking about how now the BOJ seems to be in a holding pattern. The driver's seat for dollar yen might be the Fed. Tom.
OK, a holding pattern for this BOJ and the consequential remarks coming through from the Deputy Governor and the read across these markets. Ava Hong with the deep dive out of Singapore. Thank you. So stocks, as Ava was saying, of course, storming higher in Asia after the Bank of Japan sent that strong dovish signal in the wake of Monday's stock rout. The Deputy Governor then saying the BOJ will not raise rates, quote, when financial and capital markets are unstable. Let's get more reaction then, bringing in our executive editor for Asian markets, Paul Dobson. Paul, how significant do you think these comments are? We're seeing sizable moves across these markets. Stepping into the fray then, the Deputy Governor.
Definitely. It's you could call it the BOJ put, if you like, a lot like we have the Fed put. Here comes the BOJ sort of stepping on the brakes, calming those expectations for more rate hikes in order or in response to the turmoil that we've seen in the market over the past few days. And, you know, to quote Alvin Tan from RBC, it's not just the BOJ, but it's the whole government that seems to be worried about the turmoil that we've seen in recent days. We also heard from the Prime Minister Uchida yesterday talking about the same thing, trying to calm people down. And all week long we've been hearing that kind of rhetoric. But I think it's more significant that the BOJ, having just a few days ago sounded so hawkish, is now scaling back those expectations for how quickly it's going to hike. I mean, look, this is massively important for Japan, right? They've had all of that mega long period of deflation or very low inflation. Finally, you know, they've managed to kindle some price growth. Finally, inflation was looking good for them, and they want to get interest rates off the floor. They want to normalize monetary policy. They don't want it all to go wrong the moment that they lift interest rates, which is what's happened in the past as well. So they need to really, really carefully sort of prepare markets and prepare the country for that process in order that they don't stir up this kind of volatility and they don't upset the apple cart. What they did, you know, I think it was unfortunate because the timing of the Fed and then the U.S. data came right at the wrong time for them, pretty much coincidentally, and sent the dollar stronger as well. And that's something that, by the way, is going to continue. That sent the dollar weaker and sent the yen stronger. And that's something that's going to continue and be weighing on them or troubling them. So they just really need to set those expectations carefully. So the comments, I think, to come back to your question, pretty significant and just reveal that kind of concern, that worry, that nurture for the market response to the BOJ's policy calibration in order to ensure that it can continue to raise interest rates without unsettling financial markets too much.
So, Paul, is this the end of the crisis, if we call it a crisis, mini crisis in Japan? And what happens to the unwind of the carry trade?
Yeah, I think it would be optimistic to call an end to it just yet, and that's because of what I was saying there, Tom, about the U.S. side of the equation, because the market is now worried about U.S. hard landing rather than soft landing. It's starting to think about the Federal Reserve needing to cut interest rates aggressively, which, all things being equal, should weaken the dollar and push up the yen or support the yen, and therefore, you know, tamper with or complicate at least that carry trade. And so therefore we're likely to see continuing volatility. The second thing I think to worry about or consider is the fact that a higher volatility regime, which we've entered into these past few days, will cause investors to take money off the table. They won't be pouring straight back into all of these more risky strategies right away. They won't be allowed to because of the risk metrics and parameters that they have around their funds. And so therefore, you know, we will be more cautious going forwards from here for sure. I don't think that you can expect everybody to immediately put this behind you and get on with buying the dip again.
OK, Executive Editor for Asian Markets, Paul Dobson, on these comments, of course, by the Deputy Governor of the BOJ and expectations of further volatility ahead. Paul, thank you. To the the presidential election, I should say, in the US, the politics of the US. Kamala Harris then introducing formally her running mate then, choosing Minnesota Governor Tim Walz at a rally in Philadelphia. That's when the official introduction was made, of course. Walz said Donald Trump would be a disaster for middle-class families if the former president is elected in November.
Donald Trump's not fighting for you or your family. He never sat at that kitchen table like the one I grew up at, wondering how we were going to pay the bills. He sat at his country club up in Mar-a-Lago, wondering how he can cut taxes for his rich friends.
OK, the opening trade anchor, Kriti Gupta, joining me now for the details, the analysis on what we've been seeing out of the US. The pick of Walz then, Tim Walz, not Josh Shapiro, not, of course, the representative out of Arizona with that background in the military, and, of course, a former, someone who was formerly involved in space. This is Tim Walz. He's the governor of Minnesota. Why choose Walz at this point?
Well, the blessing and curse of this pick is that no one has really heard of his name until the last 24, 48 hours. And the reason that's a blessing is because the appeal of him is that he is middle class, has grassroots. He grew up between Nebraska and Minnesota. So these are two, Nebraska in particular is, of course, a major red state. He's someone who's voted fairly conservatively relative to his Democratic peers. During his time in Congress, he was a high school teacher at some point, or secondary school for those who don't know that term in this part of the world. He also has plenty of military service. So this is someone who is seen as very, very simple, very kind of relatable, and someone who appeals to a lot of the blue collar workers at a time when one of the criticisms for Kamala Harris right now is that she is, at the end of the day, a coastal elite is what the criticism is, coming out of California, being very in the limelight, not just in the U.S. presidential election, but, of course, within California in her former role as Attorney General as well. Balancing the ticket. We'll see how it plays in the polls, of course. Kriti Gupta, thank you very much indeed on that pick of vice president nominee, at least candidate, of course, as you lead up to those elections in November. Back to the earnings story right now, and Siemens Energy coming through with a beat. Siemens Energy raising its target again, and the focus on free cash flow as well. So they now see full-year free cash flow pre-tax of between 1 to 1.5 billion euros. That's up from a previous target of €1 billion. It's the gas and grids business that's doing particularly well, offsetting the continuing challenges around the wind turbines business. In just a few moments, we're going to be speaking exclusively with the CEO of that company, Siemens Energy, Christian Bruch, on these earnings, how it positions the company then in the quarters ahead. We may also put a question around US politics because they have exposure, of course, to the US market. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Happy Wednesday. Let's get you a recap of the earnings coming through from Siemens Energy, of course, focused on gas, grids and renewables. And it's a beat that came through on the top line. Third quarter sales rising 19% to 8.8 billion euros. That is above the forecast. And free cash flow as well, the target for the full year being raised at this business. The grids, the gas components and those units doing particularly well, offsetting some of the continuing pressure around the renewables and turbines business. Let's get reaction then from the company's CEO. Joining me exclusively right now, Siemens Energy CEO Christian Bruch. Christian, thank you. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning. So orders, what stands out to me, one of the lines that stands out to me, this is a fascinating set of results, but orders for the gas services part of the business more than doubling. Do you see that momentum continuing in the quarters ahead?
Yeah, good morning, and thanks very much for having me. Yeah, you see the things coming together, and you see actually with a strong growth in electrification, we see a good order momentum in each and every of the businesses. And gas, absolutely, we see it, that it comes through what we said before. It will be an important bridge, particularly if electricity grows fast. And we see this momentum in gas. We have very strong orders in this quarter, record orders, I have to say, since the inception of the company. We see this continuing throughout the year, and with this regard, obviously, it gives us a good base also for the future to grow.
What is demanding? You talk about the electricity grids part of the business as well, Christian. What is driving that demand? Where is that coming from?
Yeah, we always have to see that the underlying demand in terms of more electrification, population growth is there anyway, right? So electricity year on year grows as expected. And on top of that, you do see now New markets coming up. One very prominent one is data centers. We see it really with a high interest at the moment. You do not see it in the orders this year so much, but you see it having a decent share in the discussions what we have for the future orders to come. And obviously, artificial intelligence, data centers, hyperscalers is a key electricity consumer, which will also drive orders in the next years to come.
That's fascinating in terms of the demand coming through for data centers. On costs, Christian, where are we in terms of the cost pressures, the input costs to your business? Have we hit a low? Are you back to pre-pandemic level? Do you see further softness in costs? How do you see that story evolving?
No, I think that is still something which we need to watch very, very carefully. I mean, obviously, it is on the energy side. It is a market which is in high demand. We see it also with our suppliers. So we see cost inflation also there, which we need to work together with our suppliers. We have been investing together with some of our suppliers also into rising capacity in terms of really countering this. But this is still something which we see as an element to watch very carefully. We are not on a pre-pandemic level there, and I think we will not be. I think it will be a market which has some inflationary elements, and this is why also on our side, pricing is something which is important to manage going forward.
The Gamesa unit, it's been a challenge, of course, the losses coming through again in this quarter, but far less in terms of the size of those losses than previous quarters. So it seems like you're making progress in terms of fixing and coming through with the turbine fixes within that unit. What is the time frame you're looking at right now? And has the money that you set aside, 1.7 billion euros, are you confident that's going to be enough?
Yeah, I mean, as you have seen, right, we are in our expectation, or well within our expectation in Siemens Gamesa. And I really have to say, step after step, we're making progress. But I also always have said it's not turned around in a quarter. It is a couple of years exercise to work through the matters. I'm confident with the accruals on the quality matters on these onshore platforms, what we communicated before. We are working through it. We are now starting to bring the fixes into the fields. So step after step, we are getting ready to relaunch, I have to say, the first platform within this fiscal year, the next platform in onshore next fiscal year. So we're working stepwise through the matters, but it obviously will take time to bring it to the profit level, which we all aspire to see. But so far, I have to say, step after step, within our expectation, we are turning around the business.
How do you view Chinese competition, particularly when it comes to onshore? And what are you doing to mitigate that competition?
Yeah, first of all, we have to say, absolutely, we see them active in the global market. But we also, in the Western industry, I think we have to be careful to get concerned and run away every time the Chinese tackle a future-oriented industry. And wind is a future-oriented industry, which we will need for a long time. And obviously, we'll have to find ways to compete. I think if we are on a level play field, I believe we can compete in these areas. We have to pick our battles. This is why we also clearly said as a company, we not do that in each and every region of the world. And you have to see both things, right? Onshore and offshore. For us, particular important is offshore, where we are the market leader. And very clearly, I also feel comfortable as seeing the capacity in the Western industry that we can provide the capacity for our customer which is needed to build up that industry. But it's something which we need to watch very carefully, and I think it is important to understand really the boundary conditions in the market to ensure that we can also in future compete in there.
Political uncertainty in the US. We lead up to that election in November. There's some uncertainty as to whether or not the government in the US can pull the trigger on some of those big ticket infrastructure projects. Are you seeing an impact at all in the US?
Yeah, as you know, US is for us an important market, and we are investing in the US on the grid factories to really supply the market. I see that continuing. Obviously, the needs is simply there because, I mean, you need to install data centers, you have consumers, you have additions. So at the moment, we are not really looking on a significant impact in either way, irrespective of which candidate. And keep in mind, obviously, a lot is decided on a state level, and they obviously all have interest to have a good, reliable energy infrastructure. And keep also in mind in our business, we see a lot in the backlog already, what we're executing next year. So this gives us the comfort to plan going forward, irrespective of the results of the election.
OK, Siemens Energy CEO Christian Bruch, thank you very much indeed. On the back of that earnings beat, seeing momentum in the gas and electricity grids part of the business, and expected to see some of that momentum continuing. Thank you, Christian, for the update. Coming up, David Solomon says a market correction might actually be a good thing. We're going to bring you our interview with the Goldman Sachs CEO. That is next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Now, Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon says he does not expect the Fed to take any emergency steps after the recent market volatility. He sat down with David Rubenstein in the latest episodes of Peer-to-Peer Conversations.
I think there are a couple of things that have gone on over the last couple of days that contributed to the market volatility, we've seen really since Friday. The first is the jobs report on Friday indicated a slightly softer trajectory for the U.S. economy than people were expecting. I think it's important to pull back at a high level and just recognize it wasn't a horrible job report. It was just softer than people were expecting. And employment levels still remain pretty robust. But it certainly took market participants by surprise, is what I would say. And market participants have been well levered toward a very soft landing. And I think they now discount that soft landing a little bit more than they did prior to this one reading. The second thing that happened is the Bank of Japan tightened rates, tightened monetary policy for the first time in a long time. Money has been very, very easy in Japan, and investors around the world have basically been borrowing in yen and investing in U.S. Treasuries and getting a nice carry on that trade. And based on the Bank of Japan's movement, a bunch of investors began to unwind those trades. There were a couple other things that went on in the margin. I think there were a couple of investors that were, positioned the wrong way versus volatility, and that had to be unwound. And you saw a very, very significant spike in the VIX, probably the single largest one-day move we had ever seen in the VIX. So all that created a little bit more market uncertainty and a little bit of volatility. But I wouldn't call it extraordinary by any means. I do think that we're getting a correction here after a very strong run in the markets, and that might be healthy. In terms of your question about a recession, our economists have upped their chance of a recession to 25% from 15%. All of that, I think, is a little lower than the broad consensus. My view is that the best chance as we look forward is, the economy will chug along and we probably won't see a recession, but the possibility is not zero. It's never zero.
And you can watch more of that interview with the Goldman Sachs CEO on the David Rubenstein Show, Peer-to-Peer Conversations, next week with the Times for your region on screen. Now, some other stories making news this Wednesday. UK police forces have deployed extra officers and say they are ready to arrest hundreds more far-right activists. This after plans circulated online to converge on immigration centres later this evening. The recent disorder has been fuelled by online misinformation about false claims about an attacker who killed 3 young girls in northwest England last week. Coming up, switching focus, the maker of Zempic and Europe's most valuable company reports earnings in just a couple of minutes' time. So we're going to break those earnings for you and bring you the details, the context when those lines break. That's Novo Nordisk in the next couple of minutes. European futures pointing higher by 1.3%. US futures also up 0.9% on the S&P E-minis. Nasdaq futures up by 1.2%. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg. Good morning, this is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Tom McKenzie in London. These are the stories that set your agenda. Easing concerns. Asian stocks rise and the yen slumps after dovish comments from the Bank of Japan. In the US, Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon says he is not expecting an emergency cut from the Fed. Campaign kickoff. Kamala Harris takes aim at key battleground states after picking Governor Tim Walz as running mate for the Democratic ticket. And the alleged mastermind of the October 7th attacks is named as the new political leader of Hamas, diminishing hopes of a Gaza ceasefire. We'll bring you the latest from the Middle East. Let's check in on these markets then. The earnings story remains front and centre. Of course, we've had a beat coming through from Siemens Energy. We have a downgrade in terms of the margin story coming through from Continental. We'll bring you the details, of course, as they cross. Right now, the most valuable company in Europe, Novo Nordisk, coming through in terms of the latest second quarter earnings. It is a miss in terms of net income, miss for Novo. That's on the top line. I'll bring you more details as and when we get. And we look at the market story, of course, adjusting around the comments from the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Japan, riding to the rescue to some extent with suggestions and a fairly strong hint that they are not going to be raising rates further if there is market volatility. On the Novo Nordisk story, that stock, of course, up 28% year to date. Again, I'll bring you the details of that. Here's the red head on Novo then. They see the full-year operating profit at a constant FX of between up 20% and up 28%. So they've raised their guidance at the top end of that range in terms of operating profit for the business. We know analysts have been looking for this. They've raised their guidance in terms of operating profit for the full year. Top end, 28%. The previous estimates had been for 25.8%. We're looking for any further detail in terms of meeting that very high demand for Wegovy. And here we have some details there. The second quarter Wegovy sales coming in just slightly below the estimates for the second quarter in terms of sales, 11.6 billion Danish kroner. The estimates had been for 13.6 billion Danish kroner. To what extent that is down to continued demand, but an inability to supply that demand is a question, of course, as we continue to go through those results. But the top line, the red head, is that they've raised, at the top end of the range at least, their profit forecast for the full year with a top end estimate of up 28%. At this point, let's bring in Bloomberg's Ashley Furlong for the details on this story, someone who keeps a very close eye on the Novo story. What jumps out to you at this point?
I think the market will welcome the raised guidance. There was a lot of uncertainty about whether guidance would be raised, especially given that we saw an impairment this quarter from a drug that failed in a late-stage trial. So I think the raised guidance on profit especially, that was very uncertain. There was expectation on sales potentially, but profit less so. And I think that will be very welcomed by the market. Obviously, we saw some slight misses this quarter as well. But as we know, supply has been it's been very, very tight at the moment still.
Well, what do we know about that supply story? They're investing heavily to build out those production facilities. Where are they in terms of closing that gap? And how much of a support is there for this stock on that gap between demand and supply?
So the most recent update, I think it was yesterday, was that I think only one dose now is still in short supply in the U.S. That's the starter dose. So people obviously starting on Wegovy might be able to, might not be able to as soon as they would like to. So that is still sort of closing down on the supply side. But I suppose what we'll want to see in the next coming months is whether they can solve those remaining issues with supply. But we have seen that they are ramping up supply for people who are already on the drug so that they can continue to take it. So I think that there's an optimistic picture with supply, but it's still a way to go. OK, so we have a red head right now. We marked this, but it's gone red now. The second quarter Wegovy sales then coming in below the estimates of 11.6 billion Danish kroner. That's below the estimates of 13.66 billion. So it's a miss there in terms of the second quarter Wegovy sales. Again, raising the forecast around the operating profit. And in terms of Ozempic sales, also slightly softer than the estimates. What is the competitive threat to Novo at this point, Ashley? Very much from Eli Lilly. As we're seeing, Eli Lilly has almost solved seemingly their supply issues. So, with Eli Lilly saying we have all our doses basically ready for patients, you want to obviously see the same for Novo Nordisk. So in the next coming months, that's going to be, who has availability on the market. That's going to be something that's really key to patients and obviously to investors.
OK, Ashley, thank you very much indeed. Taking us through these earnings as they break, of course, the lines crossing from the most valuable listed company in Europe, Novo Nordisk, cutting its full-year operating profit at a constant FX forecast. That's one of the lines, but the red head in terms of the raise in terms of the top end when it comes to its expectations around full-year operating profit. In terms of the full end, 28%. The estimates have been for up 25%. Maybe it's the low end, that plus 20% that's causing some concern. We'll see how that reflects across the markets, of course, when that stock starts trading 8 a.m. UK time. We're going to be speaking with the CEO of Novo Nordisk, Lars Fruergaard Jorgensen, at 9:20 a.m. London time. So a crucial conversation for you this morning. Now to some other stories making news, and shares of Airbnb falling sharply in extended trading. That's after a disappointing outlook for a third consecutive quarter and a warning of slowing demand from US travellers. Airbnb says it expects, quote, sequential moderation of growth in the key metric of nights and experiences booked in the current period. Disney shares closed higher in New York after the entertainment giant announced it is raising the prices of its streaming services. The price for its cheapest offering, Disney Plus, with advertising, will climb 25% to almost $10 a month. Disney Plus without ads will cost nearly $16 a month, marking a 14% increase. Switching focus, and Hamas has named Yahya Sinwar as the alleged masterminds of the group's October the 7th assault on Israel as its new political leader. The choice sends a message of defiance to Israel and the US and is seen as a blow to efforts to broker that ceasefire. Joining me now for the reaction then, the details, what this means, the implications. Bloomberg Horizon's Middle East and Africa anchor, Jemana Basenji. Jemana, what does this appointment mean then? What is your takeaway from this significant move by Hamas?
Well, ultimately, it is a defiant move from Hamas. And what's interesting to note here, Tom, is that in the last 24 hours, a lot of the names that were put forward by Arab media would suggest that Yahya Sinwar wasn't the obvious choice. The Arab media had been anticipating one of the Hamas representatives living in Doha to perhaps be the more logical name. They were looking for somebody who was closely aligned to Iran. And one of the names that did come up prior to this was Khalil al-Hayya, who, of course, was the deputy to Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas political leader who got assassinated a week ago. But it has emerged that Hamas have now officially chosen Yahya Sinwar, one of the hardliners. He has been accused of being the mastermind behind the October 7 attack, comes from the more radical wing of the party. And of course, this is going to have direct knock-on effects on those ceasefire negotiations, namely because he was resistant to many of the efforts to actually broker the deal and get the deal across the line. You also have to remember that he resides in Gaza, so is very close to perhaps the hostages themselves physically. Now, we had some commentary from the U.S. overnight, the Secretary of State Antony Blinken saying ultimately it is Sinwar. He has to be and remains the primary decider when it comes to concluding the ceasefire. It really is on him. And so the U.S. here is saying that if there is any hope for getting the ceasefire across the line, ultimately will be in the hands of Yahya Sinwar. It remains to be seen whether from Hamas's perspective these discussions actually have any room for progress.
And Jemana, we know that Hezbollah and Israel have been trading fire again over the last couple of days. We've also been hearing from the Hezbollah leader and speaking yesterday. What were the main takeaways from what we heard from him?
Yeah, so the daily exchange of crossfire continues. Yesterday, Hezbollah sent drones into Galilee, injuring several people in northern part of Israel. And this is in retaliation to an attack that Israel did on southern Lebanon a few days ago, killing several Hezbollah commanders. I believe 3 or 4 of them were killed in that attack. And then Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, gave another speech yesterday, very long, as his speeches tend to be, about an hour long. But essentially, he reiterated that the retaliation for the killing of his right-hand man, Fuad Shukr, is forthcoming, and therefore the retaliation will come. And he said, and this is crucial, either Hezbollah will retaliate alone or with allies. And the suggestion here, Tom, is that it is yet to be seen whether the response is going to come from Hezbollah acting in an independent capacity or in conjunction with Iran, with other Iranian proxies in the region, be they from Yemen or from the Houthi perspective. And the fact that he said that in that speech yesterday is reflective, perhaps, that formulation of the response hasn't yet been concluded. One other note to remark as well is that he said the killing of the Hezbollah top commander and Hamas's political leader is an achievement from Israel's side, but not a victory. And the fact that they are keeping Israel waiting for this response is part of the retaliation. The fact that the whole world, actually, not just Israel, is waiting and has been waiting all of this week for that forthcoming response is part of their own retaliation and perhaps some part of a psychological warfare that they're playing right now.
Okay. Fascinating and, of course, challenging for that region. Currently, Brent at $76.69, just up 0.3%. Jemima Persechi in Dubai, and the latest out of the Middle East. Thank you. Here's what else to be thinking about then today. Here's what else to put on the docket. 6 p.m. UK time, we're going to get a US 10-year note auction. So given the bond rally that we've seen, that's given off, of course, some of the gains given back in the last couple of days. We'll see to what extent that is absorbed by investors, by the markets, where they want to be looking in yields right now on the 10-year. And then, of course, we are going to get further details on the Disney story. You've got lines already that they're raising prices in terms of the streaming service. The second quarter earnings are going to be crossing later today. So important in terms of the gauge on the US consumer and, of course, that demand for parks and entertainment as well. And aftermarket, Warner Brothers' second quarter earnings will be reporting. So another gauge in terms of cinema goers and other parts of that business as well. So that's reporting after the market. Warner Brothers, again, a touch on the US consumer. Coming up next, we're going to be speaking to the CFO of Ahold Delhaize, talking about consumers as the Dutch-Belgian retail giant releases its latest earnings. That conversation coming up. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. We had lines crossing from Novo Nordisk, the most valuable listed European company, just in the last few minutes. I just want to clarify for our viewers, one of the top lines coming through. Novo has actually cut its operating profit when it comes to the full year. So it's a cut in terms of the full year forecast around operating profits. They now see, in constant FX terms, an increase of between 20% to 28% at the top end. Now, the estimates have been for 25.8%. So at the top end, that is higher than the estimates, but it's actually a lower target than the previous profit targets for Novo that they'd set themselves of between 22% to 30%. So that target, in terms of expectations around full-year profit for Novo, coming in slightly lower than their previous guidance. But again, at the top end, it's higher than the estimates. So hopefully that clarifies that. The stock up 28% year to date. Let's check back in on the broader markets right now. We had these crucial comments coming through from the Bank of Japan Deputy Governor, wading in and providing some additional relief to these markets, saying they will not hike further when there is this kind of market volatility. That's seen the yen drop and Japanese equities rally, and you're seeing the read across in terms of European futures looking to add 49 points across the European stock 600, FTSE 100 as well, looking to gain 1.2% at least as we lead up to the open of trade at 8 a.m. UK time. S&P EMEs looking to build on the gains of yesterday. The S&P closed higher by around 1%. Still not fully making up for the losses of Monday, but looking to build on the gains at least today. S&P futures looking to add around 39 points. Nasdaq futures also looking to gain 165 points as we build up, of course, to the European Open and then the trade stateside, with David Solomon of Goldman Sachs saying he doesn't see an emergency cut from the Federal Reserve. Let's flip the board and look cross-asset then. A little bit of selling pressure coming through from Treasuries, giving up some of the recent gains. Yields up 3 basis points, but the 2-year is now back above 4%. 147 on the Japanese yen. So what a turnaround from just a couple of days ago when you were looking at 141. 147 now on the Japanese yen, down 1.8%. Brent, $76 a barrel, just up 0.1%. The Middle East remains, of course, on tenterhooks in terms of the tension in that region. And gold at 2,392. The yellow metal just up 0.1%. It's another big day for earnings. We're getting Ahold Delhaize with a touch, of course, on the consumer in Europe, but also in the US as well, coming through with lines in terms of their second quarter earnings. Let's give you their outlook, though, for the full year. They have confirmed their outlook for 2024. This is Ahold Delhaize. And in terms of the second quarter on the margin story, adjusted operating margins coming in above the estimates. It's a beat in terms of the margin story for Ahold at 4.2%. That's the operating margin for the second quarter, above the estimates of 3.9%. Net sales also a touch higher than the estimates for this business. Second quarter net sales coming in at 22.35 billion. So the grocer performing better in terms of sales. The estimates had been for 22.2 billion. So it's a beat in terms of net sales for the second quarter. It's a beat in terms of operating margin. And in terms of the US segment of the business, really crucial, of course, with the businesses there and the stores that they have across that market. The US adjusted operating margin marginally, slightly above the estimates, 4.7%. The estimates have been for 4.46%. So it's a beat in terms of the US margin. It's a beat overall in terms of margins for the second quarter. And again, projecting out for the full year, they see full year free cash flow of about 2.3 billion euros. How they put that cash to work, of course, will be consequential. Full year adjusted operating margin they see of at least 4%. So maybe suggesting that the consumer continues to have a little bit of resilience. We've seen some earnings stories coming through in the last few days suggesting that the consumer is pulling back. But with these expectations around an operating margin of at least 4%, maybe there's a little bit of resilience there. So some of the top lines coming through from Ahold Delhaize, of course, a business that has exposure to the US market here in Europe as well. It's got the Stop and Shop stores stateside amongst others, and Bol, its e-commerce company, and whether or not they're looking to list that company is going to be a question for executives as well. Now, the Adani Group says it's planning a 150% increase in its output of solar panels by 2026 to bolster India's carbon net zero target and reduce dependence on Chinese firms. Today, in our exclusive look inside the Adani Group, we meet the man overseeing their energy business. Sagar Adani is a nephew of billionaire company founder Gautam Adani and one of 4 descendants handpicked as the next generation of leaders. We asked him about the green ambitions of a company better known for its coal business.
These workers are braving summer temperatures of over 40 degrees Celsius in western India, putting up rows of solar panels and giant wind turbines. This dusty and once barren salt desert is set to become one of the world's largest renewable energy parks, 5 times the size of Paris. This is being developed by India's biggest coal importer, the Adani Group, as it tries to align itself with the Indian government's climate goals. Tasked with meeting this challenge is Sagar Adani, nephew of Indian billionaire Gautam Adani. Though still in his early 30s, he's already spent nearly a decade at the Adani Group. As part of a succession plan envisaged by his uncle, Sagar is now in charge of the group's lucrative but contentious energy business. He also oversees finance for the whole group, which means he's well placed to answer the many questions investors still have about allegations made against the group last year by short seller Hindenburg Research, which the Adanis have denied. Bloomberg's Anto Antony put those questions to Sagar in this exclusive interview.
When the Hindenburg report happened, a $150 billion wipeout happened in the group's wealth or the family's wealth because the institutional shareholdings in these companies were very low, I am assuming. Is there any other reason which you can think of?
So that is a perception that is very different from reality. So of course, at that point in time, I would say that this report came as a shock to many people who were not expecting anything of this sort. From our viewpoint, purely this report was nothing but accumulation of everything that was written and alleged over the last 10 years before that, but also very beautifully gift wrapped and presented in a way that was, explosive and shocking, so to speak. So at the end of the day, if we are able to deliver our business in a consistent manner, after the Hindenburg report, right, we delivered the best results that the group had ever delivered in the history of the group.
Are there any specific plans to phase out the coal business in line with the targets which government has set? Any specific plans or any specific timeline?
So we will, of course, follow the government's guideline in terms of what the country needs. So in sync with that, whatever we need to do, we will do. But of course, our predominant focus is on renewables, is on sustainable energy. And with a significant push towards that, whatever we do with other sources will be a very, very small proportion of the larger context of how we invest.
So in line with the government's current projections and roadmap, what is the timeline within which you are looking at phasing out the coal?
So government's looking at a gradual ramp down until 2060. So we have a lot of assets where we have PPAs. And we have obligations in which we have to supply to various state government discoms, central utilities, and to many discoms and to the end consumers ultimately. So those obligations, contractual obligations, of course, have to be met. Our thermal platform is completely ring-fenced. It's completely independent. So with the cash flow that that company generates, that company takes its independent call with regards to how it wants to invest its own cash flow. Some of it they'll use for growth, some of it they'll use to distribute. But again, all of those plans are going to be dependent on the demand profile of the country. So ultimately, if there is a significant demand further, if the country requires it, if the people require it, and if the government requires it, that company will make its own call. But from a family perspective, when we look at a larger investment portfolio, whatever the thermal and the fossil fuel business does is going to be a small proportion of our investments in the entire sustainable value chain.
And that was our exclusive with Adani Green Energy's Executive Director, Sega Adani. Let's check back in on the Japanese currency right now, because we've had a reminder of just the central role that Japan continues to play in these global markets. The Deputy Governor of the BOJ coming out with some pretty dovish comments and saying that they will not hike further when there is market turbulence, and the Japanese yen taking a big hit to the benefit, of course, of Japanese equities. This is the move in the Japanese yen. The volatility, of course, has been pronounced just over the last 4 days. You've gone from 141 or thereabouts all the way back to 147. Nomura's head of trading telling Bloomberg he sees 148 for the currency by year end before a move to 140 potentially in 2025. So what this does, of course, to the carry trade and the unwind. JP Morgan putting in a note yesterday saying that the carry trade is only about, the unwind of the carry trade is only about 50 to 60% done. How this ties into that, of course, given the dovish comments coming from the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Japan. Let's flip the board and look at that recovery around the Nikkei, because it's almost made up the losses that have come through since the close on Friday. Let's flip the board and have a look at the Nikkei over that time frame then. The Nikkei has recovered many of those losses in terms of the steep sell-off that we saw, that remarkable sell-off that we saw. Companies like SoftBank down to the lowest level, the biggest drop since 1998 on Monday. But of course, the Nikkei has pared that drop now. It's down about 15% still, the major index from July and the peak that we saw in July, and is up about 7% year to date. So the Nikkei up about 7% year to date, but down 15% from that July peak. And it has paired, as you can see, the yellow line representing the close on Friday. So pairing much of Monday's drop, and yen weakness is a big component to that. You're seeing further gains across Japanese equities in the session today. Just checking in on the Nikkei right now in terms of the strength that's come through there in the session today, up 1.2%. Adding currently 397 points. Talking of SoftBank, let's flip the board and have a look at SoftBank. It's a big earnings day, of course, in terms of the report coming through from SoftBank at about 7 a.m. UK time. So stay tuned for that. We'll be breaking down the numbers for you, of course. Likely to report a small profit. This pie chart shows the reliance on ARM, of course, the IPO of that business in the States earlier this year, in terms of the revenue coming through, the need to finance around that to build its position, Masayoshi Son's position and bets around AI. But overall, of course, the Vision Fund provides and continues to provide something of a drag. And then again, in the context of what happened on Monday with the biggest drop for SoftBank since 1998, the earnings story that comes out from them later will be really, really consequential. A critical juncture, according to some at least, given the dump in tech stocks that we've seen. Again, the ambitions for Masayoshi Son have not been abated, planning, according to Bloomberg reporting, to deploy around $100 billion into AI-related chips. And of course, that is where ARM sits in terms of the blueprints for many of the chips connected to that AI revolution. ARM, by the way, down about 40% since early July. So look for the SoftBank. We'll be breaking those details for you in a little over 4 minutes' time. Let's check in on the broader markets then. The relief coming through from the Bank of Japan, gains, as we said, in terms of the Asian markets. And the handoff then to Europe is looking positive after very modest gains yesterday after the rout on Monday. Some, of course, turnaround Tuesday was less pronounced in Europe, but the losses, of course, were less steep as well on Monday. European futures pointing higher by 1.2%. FTSE 100 futures looking to add 100 points. S&P futures, after the gains of 1% yesterday, looking to add to that, up 0.7%. The Nasdaq 100 also gaining 0.8%. David Solomon, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, says that he does not expect now an emergency cut from the Federal Reserve. Markets pricing in around 104 basis points of cuts by the end of this year. Coming up in just a few moments, we're going to speak to Commerzbank's CFO, Bettina Orlop, on the back of those earnings at the 9:30 a.m. UK time. We're going to be speaking to the CEO of Novo Nordisk. This is Bloomberg.